Thanks for joining us for CBN News Today. I'm Heather Sells.
And I'm Ephraim Graham. Chaos, gunshots, and flames filled the city of Ferguson, Missouri last night. Violent protests coming after a grand jury failed to indict a white police officer in the shooting death of a black 18-year-old. His name is Michael Brown. Take a look at the video of the mayhem. Protesters set a dozen buildings ablaze, torched cars, and looted businesses. Police report hundreds of gunshots. CBN's John Jessup was in Ferguson when the verdict was released.
In a scene reminiscent of the Twilight Zone, this season's greeting sign hangs over Ferguson's main drag, a street dominated by police and protesters.
Hey, hey! Ho, ho! These killer cops, they got to go!
After the announcement that Officer Darren Wilson would not be indicted in the shooting death of 18-year-old Michael Brown, agitators forced police to fire tear gas where emotions ran high.
The whole thing is an entire charade to begin with.
What does this mean for you and your family and the community?
This just means I need to educate my sons on the judicial system. That's all. They're out here for a reason, to learn, and they will learn.
President Obama urged calm shortly after the announcement.
I join Michael's parents in asking anyone who protests this decision to do so peacefully.
The grand jury reached its decision after 3 months of weighing evidence and conflicting witness testimony to determine what led to the shooting. The prosecutor's office described an altercation between the two men, with Brown's blood or DNA found on the inside of Officer Wilson's car door, pant leg, and his gun.
Many observers question the prosecutor's judgment in publicly announcing the grand jury's decision in the dark cover of night, taking an already tense situation and making it even potentially more volatile.
State and local authorities say the goal now is public safety to protect lives, property, and free speech. Meanwhile, area churches have been preparing for this day, lining up food, counselors, and shelter.
A number of churches across two school corporations who have said, you know what, we're going to make a commitment to be open and accessible to our young people in a very critical time.
Trying to be a beacon of light in a dark chapter from which the city and region want to turn the page. John Jessup, CBN News, Ferguson.
Well, the president is heading to Chicago to pitch his new executive action on immigration. It is a part of an ongoing effort to promote his decision to bypass Congress and prevent nearly 5 million immigrants from being deported. Republicans are pushing back. Incoming Texas Governor Greg Abbott says he plans to challenge the legality of the president's order.
I am addressing this as a legal issue, not a political issue. The president has crossed the line from politics to endangering the constitutional structure.
The president's timing appears strategic. He's making the pitch in Chicago while Congress is on Thanksgiving recess.
The White House says the resignation of Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel is a mutual decision, but not everyone's buying it. Many believe it was actually differences with the Obama White House that resulted in Hagel's unexpected departure. Our Caitlin Burke reports.
Now, last month, Chuck came to me to discuss the final quarter of my presidency and determined that having guided the department through this transition, it was an appropriate time for him to complete his service.
On the job less than 2 years, Secretary Hagel is stepping down. Already there are leaks from White House people saying Hagel wasn't up for the job. But many believe that Hagel, like the previous Secretaries of Defense, Robert Gates and Leon Panetta, couldn't work with the president's very tight inner circle.
Inevitably, when someone like him comes in to an administration that's fairly well established, you have a number of people who have advised President Obama for a long time, going back to when he was a senator. In contrast, Barack Obama and Chuck Hagel's interactions with one another were fairly minimal when they were in the Senate, and so I think it's hard for someone, an outsider, to break into that inner circle.
Hagel's resignation comes in the midst of several foreign policy crises, including the rise of ISIS. The defense secretary appeared to disagree with the Obama administration's portrayal of the terror organization, Hagel calling the Islamic State the greatest threat in the Middle East, while Obama brushed the group aside less than a year ago, calling them the JV team.
ISIL may not appear to be an imminent threat to the United States. It is a threat to the United States. It is a threat, clear threat, to our partners in that area, and it is imminent.
Key lawmakers say that as Obama sees his policies failing, he's looking for a scapegoat. In a statement, Senator John McCain said, quote, "Ultimately, the president needs to realize that the real source of his current failures on national security more often lie with his administration's misguided policies and the role played by his White House in devising and implementing them." Now the question is, who replaces Hagel? Speculation points to Michelle Flournoy, a former Undersecretary of Defense, as the leading candidate. Some other possibilities include Ashton Carter, a former Deputy Secretary of Defense, or retiring Democratic Senator Carl Levin of Michigan, the outgoing chairman of the Armed Services Committee. No matter who the president nominates, it's certain that the new Republican Senate will not only review the nominee's resume, but also the policies of the Obama administration on ISIS and other threats as well. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Thousands of Lois Lerners' lost emails have been found. An Internal Revenue Service watchdog located the emails on disaster recovery tapes. That comes after an inspector general in the Treasury Department was asked to look into the missing emails. Last spring, the IRS told Congress 2 years' worth of emails had been lost in a hard drive crash. That was the period during which the IRS blocked the tax-exempt status for dozens of conservative groups. In previously discovered emails, Lerner used slurs showing her personal disdain for conservatives.
The Department of Veterans Affairs has officially terminated the director of the hospital where its largest scandal first came to light this summer. Sharon Hellman was the director of the Phoenix VA healthcare system, and she had been on paid administrative leave for nearly 6 months. Investigations revealed employees at her hospital lied about wait times for veteran patients being treated for a number of serious illnesses like cancer and post-traumatic stress disorder.
The city of Atlanta has suspended its fire chief for self-publishing a book that describes homosexuality as a perversion. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution reports that Chief Kelvin Cochran authored the book as part of lesson plans for a men's Bible study. The city is investigating whether Cochran violated city policies or discriminated against employees. Some firefighters said they received copies of the book in the workplace. The mayor says he's deeply disturbed by it and has ordered the chief to complete sensitivity training.
Monday marked this year's International Day of the Bible. Paul Strand traveled to the host city in Oklahoma to see how it celebrated God's Word.
Not only is the Bible the best-selling book of all time, it has its own annual day. And so people came together to celebrate the Bible by booming it out from high in the state capitol rotunda in this year's designated host, Oklahoma City.
For it is God who works in you to will and to act according to his good purpose.
John 1:1 says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Well, if the Word's God, you need to know it to know him.
There is an intimacy with God that we develop through the Word being in us.
Event organizer Richard Glickstein praised Host Oklahoma City for being one of the most evangelical in America, if not the most.
So it is a wonderful Bible-based town, and people love God here.
Bobby Grunwald is among them. He and his team developed the YouVersion app that's taken the Bible out of its covers and put it on your smartphone or tablet. He believes if you want to hear from God, you have to read his Word.
A way for him to illuminate his direction in our lives. So I think it's extremely important that we begin to make not just a habit for habit's sake, but that we actually make God's Word a part of our everyday life so that we can really be able to hear his voice and his direction in our lives.
Some people are skeptical of this book, but the problem is they don't know it.
Steve Green loves the Hobby Lobby business his family runs from Oklahoma City, but one of his biggest passions is leading people, especially skeptics, to a love of God's Word.
Before they criticize it, my suggestion is they just read it, see what it has to say, and I believe that if they apply the principles that it teaches, what history has shown is it is good for mankind, and I think it's good for an individual if they do the same.
I have suffered the loss of all things, and I regard them as rubbish, in order that I may gain Christ and be found in him.
Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from the Oklahoma State Capitol.
The Colorado Supreme Court is upholding the governor's right to issue Day of Prayer proclamations. The ruling reverses a lower court decision that found proclamations unconstitutionally favored the religious. But the state Supreme Court says opponents did not have the right to sue because they were never forced to participate in the Day of Prayer.
Coming up, he was once one of the top 15 golfers in the world. Now he's known as the OneArmed Bandit. Watch what happened next after this.
He's a professional golfer known as the OneArmed Bandit.
Larry Alford had the talent for a spectacular career as a golfer until he made one foolish decision. Angela Zatopek brings us his amazing story of redemption and restoration.
At age 18, Larry Alford was a top-ranked golfer playing with pros like Tiger Woods. He dreamed of pursuing championships and trophies, but that dream was shattered when an automobile accident nearly cost him his life and took his left arm.
I made a bad choice. I skipped golf practice that Friday afternoon. Went on to drink, go party with some friends. Next thing you know, I'm in a Corvette. I'm drunk. Going over 100 miles an hour on I-45 headed southbound, and I woke up a couple months later. And the car went flipping over 7 times end over end. I was in a T-top, and I didn't have my seatbelt on. I flew out of the vet. My guardian angels had me land on a 5-yard piece of grass of median.
After spending over 3 months in the hospital, Larry's heartbeat had actually flatlined a few times, and he endured over 50 surgeries. Along with the physical pain, Larry also struggled with questioning God on why this had to happen to him.
I was one of the top 15 golfers in the world. I had just taken Tiger Woods to a playoff in California. That was really exciting. Then I had come the next few months, I had started winning tournaments because of that confidence. I had received a lot of golf scholarships.
Seeking self-worth after losing his arm, Larry began to drink heavily and fill his emptiness by seeking attention from women and alcohol.
When you lose an arm, you're not just, it's a social problem, but it's an emotional, mindful, spiritual problem. So I masked how I was handling the situation. What better way to do it than go get drunk? Go hang out with some women. You let your guard down. But in reality, it's tough waking up every morning with one arm.
With things of the world leaving Larry unfulfilled, he began to turn to the Lord.
I never stuck with Christ my walk through high school and college. As a more mature Christian and being obedient, because obedience brings blessings, I'm actually making the turn in my life.
Having a new perspective on life, Larry began to pray about getting back on the golf course. He found an answer with Muhlenberg prosthetics.
I gripped a golf club and did an impression of my hand holding the golf club. Then I filled the hand and made it really strong and attached the child-sized knee to the inside and made it to where it would flex, and then attached a rotator.
Using a special silicone sleeve, Larry puts on the arm piece and secures it with a Velcro band. The design creates a perfect grip. After sliding in the club, the wrist joint rotates by using a baby's knee prosthesis turned upside down. Today, Larry travels sharing his story and message of faith. He also helps raise money for different charities by challenging golfers at tournaments, earning himself the nickname the OneArmed Bandit.
I don't know why people call me that, but I just went with it. I entertain corporate and charity events across the world. It's actually thebandit.net if anybody's interested to see it. So I challenge you, Angela, right now to take me on the golf course. If you can't be a short, fat, one-armed guy, then maybe we need to start practicing a little bit more.
So Larry here calls himself the OneArmed Bandit because you've challenged over 2,500 different golf tournaments with, an average of 150 players. So I'm going to take his challenge on the greens, and we're doing this right now. For you,
Right
Dr.
now.
Robertson, and the entire CBN team. We set off to hit the links, and it definitely took us a few rounds to warm up, eventually ending up in a tie. As Larry continues to travel, he hopes his story can inspire others.
Is the pain in my brain and in my face every day and in my shoulder and in my hand and in my body? Yes, but everybody suffers one way or another. I feel I've been saved because all those people have been in accidents, who've lost a limb. I feel like God has put me in their life so I can encourage them that they can go on and they can do it.
Larry says in order to overcome adversity, you must have faith and the right attitude. For more of his inspirational story, visit CBNnews.com, and there you can find a link to the OneArmed Bandit's website. I'm Angela Zatopek, CBN News, Houston, Texas.
Up next, he was an Olympian, a prisoner of war, and after all of it, a believer. We're hearing from the son of Louis Zamperini about his father's remarkable life and new movie. On Christmas Day, the movie Unbroken opens. It focuses on the life of Louis Zamperini, an Olympic athlete who fought in World War II, survived years as a prisoner of war, and then accepted Christ at a Billy Graham crusade after struggling with alcoholism after the war. And Zamperini's son, Luke, joins us now with more on what we can learn from your dad's life. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
This has been an incredible year. Your father finished his second book. He passed away, went to be with the Lord shortly thereafter, and now this movie about his life is opening on Christmas Day. How do you make sense of this year and the timing of this all?
The timing is perfect because had he been around right now, he might be pretty cranky at all the attention.
All right. I was really struck when I read the book of your father's whole story of surviving World War II and then struggling afterwards and accepting Christ at a Billy Graham crusade. The movie doesn't include that. What is your take on that omission in the movie?
Well, it would take about 9 hours to tell the entire story of Louis Zamperini, and the movie has to be, the story has to be told in less than 2.5 hours in the film. So although they didn't have the Billy Graham crusade tent scene, it didn't cast Reverend Graham, the message is still there in the film. It's not missing.
And when you say the message, what is the message that you're hoping will go out?
That the power of forgiveness. You know, the movie, is about the endurance of the human spirit, and it's also about the spirit of forgiveness.
Talk a little bit, too, about this book. I know your dad just finished writing this summer. This is a book of his life lessons. What was he hoping to really communicate with this book?
Well, what he was hoping to communicate was, of course, that the lessons he learned from all of his experiences.
He talks in this book about sharing Christ with a variety of people, too. Was that part of a way of his life after he accepted Christ?
After he accepted the Lord, this was his life. He dedicated his life to reaching out to others, particularly to the troubled youth of America. And he believed that by just telling his story, being a testimony of what God did in his life, would be a good message to bring people to the Lord.
And I just want to come back to this theme of forgiveness because it really is so powerful in his life. And he says here, of all the wonderful results of changing my life, perhaps the best is my ability to forgive. As his son, as you think about his life, how did forgiveness and that ability really change his life?
Being able to forgive was actually a tonic for him. And it changed his life. He was able to no longer harbor any hard feelings for his tormentors and captors. And he subsequently had a life of joy, the joy of telling his story. Let's face it, Louis Zamperini was a miraculous person. And these miracles happened in his life to demonstrate the power of God in his life.
That's great. Well, we'll pray that this all comes out in the movie and the book. Luke Zamperini, thanks for your time.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, Black Friday shopping is already underway on the internet, and smartphones like the new iPhone 6 are expected to be among the big deals.
But before you take the plunge on such a big purchase, here's a quick look at our coverage about the release of this latest iPhone. As you can see, we've left the studio and we've joined all the talk about Apple's latest gadget, talking about the iPhone 6. And joining us now to talk more and clue us in is our digital and social media contributor, Caleb Kincheloe. So, Caleb, iPhone 6, how big of a deal is this?
Ephraim, this is an incredibly big deal. Now, the first thing is that you couldn't even watch the reveal unless you had a Mac product with the latest iOS.
All right, so my first generation iPad,
couldn't watch
do
it. Very exclusive move by Apple. No, I didn't see it. Okay. Now, also, this device broke some records.
Okay.
Within the first 24 hours, they had 4 million pre-sales.
4 million?
4 million.
How does that compare to 2012
2012 with the iPhone 5S, they had 2 million pre-sales.
So doubled?
Yes.
Wow. Well, amidst all this hype, this has also sparked some debate on social media. Tell us what people are saying.
Well, there's a lot of new features, as always, but the big thing on social media, the screen size.
All right.
Originally, Apple said they would never change the screen size, but now they have the 4.7 and a 5.5 for the iPhone 6 Plus.
All right, so the iPhone goes big.
iPhone goes big.
And what are we seeing in terms of comparisons?
Well, those comparisons have sparked some controversy, especially pictures like this, which have been circulating all over social media. And basically, people are saying that all the Android phones have had those same features for years now, and Apple's playing catch up.
Okay.
So here's what I did. I decided to take my camera out into the streets and ask people their thoughts. Android versus iPhone.
Android, it's more reliable. When iPhone does it, I just feel like it's more precise, just the right features you need.
I'm neutral. I think both of them have their strengths and weaknesses. I also think that Apple has a lot of hype to it. They got great marketing.
I'm just really into their design, both in their user interface and even the devices themselves.
I would say mainly the biggest differentiator is cost.
The next couple of years will probably show which one is more innovative.
Well, no matter where you fall in the debate, if you are already an iPhone user, I know you have 3 questions. So let's talk about that. First off, charger. Can I keep the same charger?
Charger's the same from the previous model.
All right, that's good news. Apple Pay. Everybody's talking about Apple Pay now, so can I use it?
Unfortunately, not yet.
All right,
it's coming soon. It's
coming soon. And lastly, probably the biggest and most important one, battery life. Will it last longer?
Yes, it will last longer.
All right, so they've taken some advice from their users and improved.
Of course,
there.
you have to. Yeah.
That's
we
good.
need longer battery life.
Indeed, with all the stuff we do. Well, we know that the debate does continue. We want to keep the conversation going, so please take the time to post your comment right here on Facebook as well as Twitter. For now, though, I'm Ephraim Graham.
And I'm Caleb Kincheloe, and this is your Digital Download.
And of course, since that review, Apple Pay is now available at many retailers for people to use.
And so I got to put you on the spot. Are you Apple or Android?
I am Apple, but I am still iPhone 4.
Oh, okay. Right.
So I'm going to get there, I promise, at some point.
Very good. Well, that is it for now on CBN News Today. And you can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues that you care most about at cbnnews.com.
Want to hear what you think about the stories? You can do it on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. Thank you so much. It is Tuesday. Make it terrific.